Wait for it. Wait for it, and we're live. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans. It's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just a couple of nerdy veterans, a stabby chaos coordinator, and one chief shenanigator geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. We are the podcast that puts the fun in dysfunction. So without further ado, we got a little bit of housekeeping. So if you haven't noticed, we haven't seen Stabby and Nick for a while. That is because both of their jobs, they've had to take leave the few times they've been on the show. So we're going to start doing a few episodes about an hour late on the prep time, so it coordinates with East Coast Weird Time. But that's going to take a little bit of a lag. We're going to try to redo some of our episodes recording slots to get them on. But it's just the Border Patrol keeps Nick super busy. So, they apologize. They really miss being on the show, and we'll make some adjustments in the future. And with that, we're going to let our guests introduce themselves, starting with Dr. Brent Roeder.
Hello, my name's Brent Roeder. Many people in fandom know me as Evil Penguin. I'm a neuroscientist. Most of my work's been in memory. I try to take the fiction out of science fiction. I also do a little bit of writing on the side. So I try to put some fiction back in science fiction to ensure I have job security.
Nice.
How did you get the nickname Evil Penguin?
It was originally a gamer tag from long ago, and then I made a joke about it on the forums, and the joke kind of took a life of its own. And next thing I know, I was being set on fire and thrown out of windows and sent into space and duct taped to rocket ships and all in round robin stories, at least that we can admit to in public where we're being recorded. And so it just kind of stuck from there.
Were you the one that Doc Hampson did your PhD thing at the sci-fi convention in North Carolina?
Yes, I was.
I was actually there for that one. It's like one of 3 cons I've ever attended. So, okay. Because yours was messed up because of the Rona stuff, right? Like the ceremony was messed up because of that?
Yeah, so normally when you graduate with your PhD, they have a hooding ceremony, and that's where someone usually close to you, typically your advisor, and Dr. Hampson was my advisor, hoods you, and that's when you're like officially a doctor now. And they canceled the hooding part of the ceremonies, and they're like, oh, well, you can have family come, but only 2, and we might cancel it until like the morning of the graduation. And so instead of going through all of that, I'm like, forget that. So we did other things. But Dr. Hampson surprised me with an impromptu hooding ceremony at a science fiction convention.
In Sweden, they give you a real-life sword when you get your PhD. We need to bring that to America.
So I will say that you heard that thing a while ago about how often do men think of Rome?
Yes.
So I think of Rome quite often because I have a gladius on my desk. So I already have a sword, and I bought it for myself for my PhD.
I have it put away at the moment because I've been dusting, but I have the Kopesh that James Ward gave me that I keep. All right, so next we have Miss Jana S Brown, who sometimes cosplays as Jena Rey. Can you introduce yourself to our listeners and viewers at home?
I can indeed, though I think a lot of you have heard my introduction before. We'll give it again just for, everybody else in the class. I am Jana S Brown. I write science fiction, fantasy, and other speculative stuff, sometimes with smoochies, under the pen name Jena Rey. I write other stuff under other pen names. I have had a lot of very cool surgeries using various technology, which we'll be talking about. And I was a senior editor at a school that taught people how to do medical transcription and medical coding. So I have read a lot of the reports of really cool things, and I'm really excited to see all the things that I don't know anything about, but can look forward to in the future. The future. That thing.
All right. Next, we have Mr. J.R. Wise, the cooler, skinnier J.R.
Definitely not cooler, maybe skinnier. But I'm a former Marine, former soldier, and more relevant to this topic, former EMT and currently an athletic trainer with the fire department. I've also been hurt in every way imaginable doing those things. So I've been on both sides of healthcare. And hopefully I can contribute to this podcast in some meaningful way.
So you're basically saying you're the bionic man.
Yeah, but except like I'm just older and fatter and slower instead of bigger, stronger, faster.
Oh, I know how that feels.
All right, and last we have Speaker to Lab Animals, Mr. Dr. Rob Hampson.
Hi, I'm Rob Hampson. I actually wrote a version of the $6 Million Man,
Really?
Bionic Man. I write mostly hard science fiction and dabbling a little bit in hard science fantasy, where it may be fantastic, but we use the same rules of if you can find it in real life, you will find the same information in my stories. That's my hard science fiction rule. But I am a professor in an Institute of Tissue Engineering, having spent most of my career in the neurosciences and in physiology and pharmacology. I have worked with a number of the groups that have invented a lot of the really cool stuff that's being done in medicine these days, and am now mentoring the next generation of people like Brent, who will invent things even cooler than what I got to work on.
All right. And next, we will do the religion question. We are going to be doing these a little bit different. If you notice, dear listener, on the panel questions, we can't spend an hour just talking nostalgia when there's a large panel about all of our favorite things. We'll save our favorite things for the Sound of Music, and instead we are just going to jump right into to the topic. And so we have just the two questions today. Since we're talking about medical technology of the future today, of all the sci-fi you've read, which one piece of medical technology would you want in real life? Brent.
It's been in various different stories, but the standard learning disability implant. Because I'd really love to get rid of I can say dyslexia, but when I write it, it comes out as dyspepsia.
You're talking about like a nanite?
It's been multiple different ways depending on what author has done it. It's been a computer chip that's a one-off implant. It's been a standard add-on to neural implants that everyone has. It's been, I've seen it as genetic corrective surgery. So it's how it's taken shape and has differed from universe to universe. But the fact that it's just the standard one that is just plug and go or insert and go, or, it's a standard shot, it's like getting your wisdom teeth out. Not necessarily pleasant, but routine would be so lovely.
He wants a thingy in his brainy.
Well, I have a thingy in my brainy that I would like to brain a little bit better.
All right. Jana, what about you?
Okay, so one of my favorites is Dr. McCoy in Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home, and he's walking through the hospital and he's just absolutely blown away by how primitive the whole thing is. And there's a woman who's in to get dialysis and stuff, and he hands her a pill and she takes it, and later scene we see her going, he gave me a pill and I grew a new kidney. And
I remember
there are
that scene.
several things that I want that technology to just fix. I want to take a pill and not need to wear my glasses anymore, or fix this hip that's busted, but that whole idea that he hands her a pill, she takes it, and the next scene, I grew a new kidney. I love that technology. Please just give me the little white pill and let me grow a new whatever it is that I need. I love Bones in both versions. He was just amazing.
Okay. What about you, JR?
Kind of the same thing as Jana. Honestly, you see it a lot in a bunch of different universes, whether it's little nanites or some miracle injection or whatever. Like in video games, it's obviously really prevalent with like the stim packs and Fallout, but where like you get shot and you can just inject yourself with something and suddenly it's fixed. And that's just because I get hurt a lot. My wife is laughing at me behind me because she can't leave me alone with sharp objects for too long before I text her or call her and said, do we have Band-Aids?
They say that the number one thing to cause injury in old men is thinking they're still young men.
Agreed.
Screw that.
You're only as old as your knees feel.
Oh, yeah.
187.
Yeah. And it's not service connected. What about you, Dr. Hampson?
So there was a short story I read a long time ago, science fiction, Came from 1950 by C.M. Cornbluth, and it was called The Little Black Bag. And there were these magic futuristic medical instruments in it. There was a scalpel that would just separate the tissue without any blood. There was this little spoon-like device that he could go in and he could scoop out the fat. And then he gave it a little shot of something called Fermol, and all of a sudden the muscles regrew and the tissue tightened. And when I think about the extra rolls here and the arthritis and all that kind of stuff, I want the little black bag.
Okay, I was kind of torn. So I like the Bacta tank that was in Star Wars, where you just get in there and it heals you all up. And I liked Terry Mixon's Empire of Bones, where they had the nanites and like the brain mesh implant that just fixes all the things and lets you connect to technology. But he also showed how that could go horribly wrong with one little computer virus. So it's like, I mean, yeah, you could fix all the things, but you could also become a zombie. So it's
no zombies, please.
Well, you're not really a zombie because you're not dead. You're just stuck inside a body you can't control anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So your body is still alive. It's just
Icky.
Yeah, this is icky. Anyway, all right. And because this is a Blasters and Blades podcast where we try to be civilized human beings, we are no longer knuckle-dragging troglodytes. Coffee or tea, and how do you take it, Brent?
If we're talking about caffeine, Mexican Coke.
Okay. That's where they use real sugar?
That's soft. He's talking about the soft drink.
That's the one that comes in the glass bottle where they use real cane sugar?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right. I mean, I assumed I didn't have to ask if you meant throat Coke or nose Coke, so.
Don't get us in trouble, JR.
All right,
Mexican, not Colombian.
Jana.
Oh, I will always drink my Diet Dr. Pepper because it is my absolute favorite. But my husband did get so my husband likes the Fallout games. Fallout 76 is currently his jam. And Jones Soda has been yes, it's true. Jones Soda has been creating some of the sodas from the game, the Nuka-Colas. And so they did a blue raspberry thing, and then they did a fusion that was peach mango, and that was actually pretty good. And we just recently got their grape soda. And I'm not a real fan of the artificial grape flavor, but this tastes the closest to taking actual pressed grapes and making it fizzy without going into wine territory that I think I've ever had, and it was pretty darn good. So we're waiting. The next one that's coming out is sarsaparilla, so that may be my next favorite.
Sarsaparilla is just a type of root beer, right? It's like the original root beer?
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's just a slightly different root and a slightly different brew. So the flavor is a little different. It's not as vanilla. It's got more bitter notes to it.
Yeah, I seem to remember that when I did reenacting, they had that because it was more period authentic. So the olden times.
Ye olden times.
So how did the Nuka-Cola I'm assuming it does not have any actual radiation and nuclear
no, but the color they got was fantastic. I mean, it was wholly bright, and I did not read the side of the bottle because I don't want to know what they put in there to get those colors. But yeah, it was wow. And so the grape is this really dark purple, and then when you pour it in, it almost glows.
Wait a minute, just to be clear,
amazing thing.
Was this bottled in Chernobyl?
No comment.
Okay, JR.
On the grounds that I don't know.
Red wine and nose Coke. Yeah.
There's always one in every crowd.
Do you have a preference with what kind of red wine?
I'm a bit of a whore for red wine. I'll drink almost anything. I prefer dry reds, red blends. This is a Petit Verdot, and I really like it.
Okay.
A lot of good wineries in Virginia. I do like the local wineries around here.
All right. I never got into the wines. I prefer. I'm a simple man. Beer, give it to me. I'm good. Some bourbon.
I also like that.
Well, I mean, I don't try to be highfalutin. You know, I'm just not that guy.
No, so, I mean, like I'm just an alcoholic, and my wife likes wine, so I switched to wine.
That works. All right. What about you, Dr. Hampson?
Well, I think the last time I was on, I was singing the praises of Hawaiian coffee, but this time it's just very simple iced tea half and half with lemonade. So that's what I'm sipping on.
Okay. I am been trying some hot chocolate lately just because try something a little different. And I got some that was at the Trader Joe's that was supposedly like really low in calories. So it's like 100 calories a cup. It doesn't quite taste as much like hot chocolatey chocolate, which is probably why it's only 100 calories. So I probably, when the box is gone, will not be getting any more of it. If I'm going to subject myself to something that's not coffee, it ought to taste like something that's not coffee. So
That'd be delicious.
Exactly. I mean, I like the way coffee tastes. I like the way hot chocolate tastes. I did not like this artificial stuff, but I also don't like throwing money away. So I'm like forcing myself to drink it. So, all right, with that out of the way. So first off, obviously, we talk a lot about science fiction and the futurism topics that involve that, but we never really dove into the medical stuff. We always sort of took it for granted that you got Dr. Bones or, the little black bag or whatever, and, wave a wand and suddenly everything's fixed. So today we wanted to dive in and start talking about the things in there. So we'll start with all of you fine folks. So do you prefer them to, wave the Handwavium wand and say, I said it's real, so it's real? Or do you prefer them to try to get closer to the line of reality?
I think it depends on the setting. If you're writing like a science fantasy setting, like, like why not just wave the wand and let them be healed? It could speed up the story. That way you don't have to wait months or weeks or whatever for the protagonist to be healed from getting shot in the face with an alien blaster or something. But sometimes it's kind of cool to see, some limitations on it where you can't just use that stim pack from Fallout, stab yourself in the stomach and be good. So I think it very much depends on how realistic of a setting you're going for.
My personal
most things. Oh, go.
My personal preference is for two things. The first is internal consistency within universe. So as long as the rules don't magically change as the situation needs them to, but is fairly consistent, as you have a well-structured universe, that's the most important thing. The second thing is, however you are describing it should be relevant and accurate for the person doing the describing. I don't want an infantry private giving me a doctoral dissertation on regenerative medicine. It's just not going to make sense.
Yes, that's a problem with a lot of technology in sci-fi. All of a sudden you have like these ground pounders that suddenly have PhDs in physics. I'm like, no, they don't understand how the FTL drive works, and they don't understand how the medbot works. They just know it works.
Yeah. I did read one story, I forget what it was, but where they had a private giving a doctoral level description of it because that's what he was reading off of the instruction manual. And then they like lampshaded. Yeah, and then they lampshaded. It's like, does anyone understand this? And they threw out the manual and then started like hitting buttons.
Well,
now,
absolutely.
That's actually believable.
Yeah, it has to go with what do the characters know, and also what is relevant to the story. And if you're going to do it, get it right, because the number of dislocated shoulders that I had read about, where I'm like, that is not what that feels like. Been there, done that multiple times, and that is not how you fix it. When there's jerking and there's slamming and there's this and that, I'm like, you're gonna separate muscles, man. You're gonna cause more problems than what you are fixing when you start grabbing the human body and jerking it around. You got to make sure that there's got to be some sense of this is actually how it works versus this is how it works on TV because it's dramatic. And if you're going to go for the dramatic, again, take it only as far as the story can support it, because people who have done something like this, they'll be out.
So I can tell you, when I dislocated my shoulder in Iraq, I had seen on Lethal Weapon where you slam it into the door and it puts it right back in. And so the medic that was with me was like, Sergeant Handley, just slam it into the door like Lethal Weapon, right? You saw that movie. And I did, and I squealed like a little girl, and it still was dislocated. It does not work, people.
No, it's not even hard. It's not even hard to reduce a shoulder dislocation. I've done that as an AT. Like, you don't even have to actually touch the patient. Just have them hold something that's about 10, 15 pounds, and then just like kind of pendulum their arm, little traction, and suck
He
back
didn't
up
tell me
in.
to do that. He said
An
slam it
anterior
into the Humvee door.
dislocation.
Yeah, that's the thing. It wants to go back in,
Yeah.
especially with the kind of dislocations most of us get. So a lot of slamming around. When I dislocated mine, I was sword fighting, and we had this wonderful, wonderful man who showed up, and he was mute, so he couldn't explain to me what he wanted me to do. He just held up his hands and took my arm and put it through a series of rotations, and it slid right back in. It didn't it hurt, but it wasn't the agonizing, screaming, wailing, carrying on thing. And at no point did he do anything violent. He didn't have to. And when I talked to another EMT, he's like, yeah, really, if you're to the point that it needs violence, you need to go to the hospital because there's more things involved. And so for me, every time I read it in a book and they're all jerking on that poor guy's arm, it's just like, oh, stop doing that. That's you are mean, and that is not how that works. And there's a lot of things that I think we see all the time where we go, that is not how that works. If you know anything about medicine at all, that is not how that works. And so as writers, it behooves you to get somebody who knows at least something about medicine. And if you're going to put those scenes in, have them read through it just for a sanity check to go, is this how that happens? And also, is this actually how we would treat it? And then add your cool futuristic stuff, because there's a lot you could do with that to say, it's the medbot that fixes it, or it's the whatever.
So there's actually another way you can handle that, which is to actually lampshade the trope by saying, well, all you got to do is jerk it. No. And then you have another character saying, no. That's how you tear the rotator cuff.
Right.
As I know full well, because I tore my rotator cuff, 3 tendons, partial tears,
Ow.
by trying to catch a server cabinet falling off of a table. So, that's the same type of force that they're proposing to use to reset the shoulder. That's not the way you want to do it.
Yeah, and it hurts like a mofo. But to piggyback off of what Brent said, when you talked about the private that's giving the PhD level dissertation, the other part of that is when you have the medical personnel that are field medics, you've got to get their bedside manner right, because most field medics I met were kind of gruff. Like they're in the field with the grunts. They're
not having any of it.
They have grunt like when I dislocated my shoulder and I got shot in the chest. I remember the field medic that I went to told me to get the sand out of my lady parts, and he used some letters and words that we won't say on air, but like that was just the norm. Admittedly, I got shot in the savvy plate. Like it didn't go all the way through, so not quite the same as a sucking chest wound.
Kept going.
Right. Well, I mean, we were already coming into the base anyway because we were kind of out of bullets, so it was a thing. But I'm like, I can't imagine having that happen where the doctor was like one of these, oh, are you okay? Hold your hand. Like, that just doesn't work in that setting. And I've seen times where they try to rate Mary Poppins as your field medic, and it just, I threw the book. I couldn't keep reading it.
Sadistic Mary Poppins.
In early days, when I was still just a subject matter expert before I started writing myself, I had a male science fiction author ask me for some details of something he was writing in as part of a plot point. And it was that I don't know why it is. All of my friends who ask me for science advice for their writing, they always want to kill off characters. I don't know why this is, why they choose me, but that's what he wanted. And then I said, okay. And then he shows me what he wrote, and I said, yeah, but that's not what the actual words are. He says, these are grunts. So now, if I had 2 scientists out on a smoke break talking about it, it might be the terms you're talking about, but these are grunts. They don't know any better. So I'm kind of with you want the grunts to use the grunt language. You want the people who, the taxi driver, the person in the street, they're all going to say, they're going to be talking about bugs and not viruses and bacteria and microbes and so on and so forth. Is he got the bug, he got the Rona, he got the flu, he got the whatever, no matter what it is. Even if you've just now created the super bug that's going to mutate everybody into the zombies, it's still a bug.
So one thing I will add to that is the other thing is people then tend to go too far to the other extreme where, oh, it's a scientist, they must always speak like it's a dissertation.
Yeah.
the other month I was proposing an idea for a new traumatic brain injury model. And I was talking to Rob about it. And I'm like, what if we build a potato gun and we shoot it across the room and smack it into the wall? And that was how I was proposing this like super high tech model of, possible revolutionary, hopefully, model for traumatic brain injury. And it's like, let's build a potato gun. So,
and he had a professor walk by as he was describing it, who looked at it and says, "What are you going to do with the potato gun? Shoot it?" Oh, yes, you are, aren't you?
Yeah. And it's a quite sciencey idea. I think it's a very good idea. But so sometimes even the scientists don't, bust out all of the fancy words all of the time.
I mean, he is an evil penguin. It's truth in advertising.
Yeah. And when you're communicating with somebody who doesn't understand all the words that like you don't want to bring it to the level that you understand. It's like, and I teach a lot of the athletic training students in this area, which for anyone who's not listening, athletic training is actually a healthcare provider, despite the extremely misleading name.
Yes, it is.
And I tell them, like, I swear to God, if I hear you use anatomical terminology with the patient, I'm going to smack you because you don't sound smart. You sound like an asshole. Just say it and just say back. You don't need to say posterior. They know that word, and that should play out in writing too. Like, like the doctor or the scientist, unless you're trying to write him as an asshole, should use easy to digest language.
As you know, Bob, the dorsum is the term used for the back. We are going to refer to the spinal column and all of the vertebrae instead of those fiddly little bones.
Yeah, though sometimes it can kind of work in the reverse. So I had a case last February where I was at a writers' conference and a lovely lady there got her foot run over by a car. And so I'm a first responder. I checked it. I looked at it and I went, "Your foot is busted, man. We are going to take you to the hospital." So we ran her to the hospital. And by the time we got to the hospital, she believed me that her foot was broken because she was ready to go in the restaurant and eat her dinner. She's like, "It's fine. It just hurts a little bit." I'm like, "Oh, no. We're broken all over." And so getting in there, the nurse is starting to take information. And because I know how she's got to fill out that screen and exactly what information she needs, it was a good moment to slip in and say, "Okay, here's the things that you need to know. There was no LOS. There was this. Pain is here, here, and here. It was a twist in and all these things." And she looks at me, she goes, "You've read medical records." And I'm like, "Yes, I'm not a doctor. Don't pin that on me. But I've read enough medical records that I know what you need to know." So sometimes to take that the other direction and say in the right moment to have somebody come up with those medical records because it's its own lingo, they can have that conversation very quickly. And she could get more information out of me in that medical way than we would have got out of the poor little gal who was shocky by this point and kind of woo, than in all the time she talked to her. So it is interesting where you can say that is a very particular vocabulary. And so sometimes having two characters have a short conversation in that vocabulary, you can show what they share and how they can communicate very, very rapidly, the same way you can with two military guys or two people that share any other language that works that way.
Yeah, that's a good point because like the girl that works with me, who's also an AT, like when we talk to each other, even in front of patients, we'll use those kinds of words because it's quicker, it's more precise, and then oftentimes they're just kind of staring at us like we have a male reproductive organ growing out of our forehead. But it's quicker, it's easier, it's more efficient, and like we don't really care if everyone else understands what we're saying as long as we understand, because like oftentimes we have like 6, 7, 8 patients going at once and it's just us two. So like we have to be quick and efficient.
And if you're writing the story, if you're creating the story in any fashion, and you want to show the contrast between the person who's shocky or not tracking what's going on and the person who's with them who is fully tracking, then that's a great gimmick to build two pieces of character. The person who's calm under pressure and is able to rattle off all the terms, and then your reader doesn't have to know what the terms are. but you've just done a great job of show as opposed to tell, to show how one of them's not tracking and one of them is calm, cool, and collected. It's a great way to do it.
Amusingly, I actually made one time when I was the patient showing up at urgent care, I was reporting everything the way they needed it, and I made the doctor panic because according to the doctor, I shouldn't have been able to report that.
Nice.
All right, we're going to pause because it's about the halfway point where we shamelessly shill for the man and the woman, and then we're going to come back and we'll keep talking.
The necromantic magic of the Great Lich has held sway over the world for 100 years. Can a young knight of the god of death and the last priestess of the goddess of life destroy him before their homeland falls? The only survivor of his convoy, journeyman knight Darian, is entrusted with an ancient scroll and one mission. Return the scroll to the High Temple in Hothan, no matter the cost. He never expected that journey to include stumbling onto the last healer in the world. Now he must take not only the scroll but the woman across the kingdom to safety, each step dogged by the relentless undead. Death's Knight, Book 1 in the completed War of the Lich series by Matthew T. Summers and Jena Rey.
All right, thank you for sticking with us through that commercial interlude. So now that we're back and the wine glass is refilled and everyone is happy to be here. So we talked a little bit about getting the characters right, like getting the doctor, the people interacting with the technology right. So let's talk about the technology itself. One of the things that continually surprises me is when people write this stuff and they end up getting it right years later. So like, you had told me when in the 80s that the medical mesh implant stuff was real. I'd be like, yeah, right, that's sci-fi. And then Elon Musk put it on a pig and made it walk. Now, whether that's going to kill the pig long-term, who knows? We don't know that yet. But they made it work-ish. And I'm getting a look from Dr. Hampson. So maybe it didn't work as good as advertised on TV, but they certainly sung its praises on Twitter for a while.
Yeah. It was amazing for what it did. So I'm not knocking it at all. It's absolutely amazing.
But then you get something like Warhammer 40K, which was invented just to be ridiculous. Take all the sci-fi tropes, maximize it by about a bazillion, and say, okay, let's have fun. And then there's this doctor. His name is Chris Reynard, MD. He's actually a bone doctor. I don't know what kind of doctor that is, but he does sci-fi, or he does videos where he breaks down sci-fi for the fun of it and what this would do to your body. And he actually broke down, and some of the stuff they did to make the Space Marines is actually possible with technology we have. Now, whether you would survive the process, whole nother story.
I just want to interject real quick. Cadia did not fall. It is simply closed for routine maintenance.
All right. Good to know.
That guy is preaching imperial truth right there.
Routine maintenance scheduled for millennia. Just because you didn't notice it on your calendar is not my problem.
Yeah. Cadia stands.
Cadia stands.
That is good to know. Market calendars accordingly, people. Long live the emperor. So I'm always amused, entertained, and impressed whenever you see stuff that years later it turns out they got this right. And did they get it right because they were guessing, because they did their own research, or because they inspired other people to make it work? It's always, a guess. But if you check it out, I'll link to him in the show notes. But his name is Dr. Chris Raynor, Raynor. He's got a YouTube channel, and among other things, it's worth checking out. But there are other places where you see technology like that have happened. Star Trek has a lot of it. Have you guys seen any other medical technology that has surprised you that's come from science fiction?
So there's been several challenges to develop the Star Trek tricorder, medical tricorder. But one of the most amazing things I saw was something that looked just like a standard podium microphone. Had it set up at a show by a 5-letter agency that is near and dear to my heart. And the guy aimed it at me and said, "Okay, check your heartbeat." Meanwhile, his display was showing my heartbeat, and from 3 feet away.
That was the X Prize that DARPA did, right?
That was the X Prize. Yes, it was part of it. What these guys were doing is it was actually magnetoencephalography. They were using ambient room magnetometers to read the magnetic signal of the heartbeat, and it was fascinating. And so that's a step in the direction of the tricorder. And then, of course, I had a chance to meet and even shake hands with the guy with the fully bionic arm from his elbow on down to his hands, and he will take the thing off at the elbow and hold it out and shake your hand. He can flex the fingers, he can move the wrist and everything with it disconnected because it's all wirelessly. He's got sensors up here on the upper arm that are wirelessly connected to the hand. And so here's the hand. And he taught himself to play the piano. He did not know how to play the piano before, but he taught himself to play the piano with his bionic hand.
That's so cool.
awesome.
I have seen some of those videos where over the years that bionic hand has gone where it took a whole room to control it to now it's a backpack you can wear and go out in public with it. The technology for that is getting better.
Well, this one is self-contained in the hand and then a band that goes on his upper arm.
And
that's even better than the one I saw.
And he admits that one of the first things he did is try to get it to walk like thing.
Because who wouldn't, really?
It's too heavy, though, because of the internal batteries.
Mm-hmm.
That is kind of cool, though. I mean, I don't want to lose my arm to find out, but it's kind of cool.
But I think the size of medical technology is one of those things that we continually see, that it starts really, really big, and we've got lots of things that are part of it, and then we tend to see it shrink down and be, a lot of wearable devices, and those are things that we saw in science fiction. But like my brother-in-law has a continuous glucose monitor, and he doesn't have to stab himself all the time to find out what his sugar is doing. It's just sitting there, and my sister can monitor him while he's up the canyon chasing a deer, and she can go, he hasn't eaten lunch yet. And then she sends him text messages that go, eat your granola bars. And isn't that cool that she can get that monitoring back and forth? But yet we've got a size that has come down. Pacemakers and things like that, same kind of thing for monitoring the heart. We've gone from big clunky machines to something that was about the size of a deck of cards. And now my father got a pacemaker, and it's just a little bit bigger than a stamp. And it connects to a box that sits next to his bed, and they can monitor him within. He can go any place in the neighborhood in his immediate cul-de-sac, and it can still pick up what's going on with his heart. And his doctor can mess with it remotely to turn his heart up, to turn his heart down, to do all those things. And I think that's a lot of that technology we've seen in stories of it will get smaller, it will get easier to monitor, and we'll be able to control what's going on inside with just a little tweak here, a little tweak there.
Yeah, even something as simple as just like monitoring vital signs in like your squad and with a military unit. Like you saw that with Heinlein in like 1959 and Starship Troopers. Like Johnny Rico would monitor like the vital signs of his guys. It was only mentioned a couple times, but like that's extremely doable now, and like it's something that we do with firefighters now. We have a system where when we're on scene, we can we can also monitor how much air they have left in their SCBA, how long they've been working, all these kinds of things, and it's just all this real time data that can go to the scene commander. And it's even just a couple decades ago, that was kind of sci-fi.
Mm-hmm.
That is not the firefighting school I went to when I did it for the Army and the Navy back in '99.
You mentioned back to tanks at the beginning of the show, and we have what are called bioreactors, and they're primarily for tissue and organs, and so for parts right now, but it's to create an environment that tries to replicate the ideal environment for them. But eventually I could see that being at least limited deployment, especially for something like burns, where you could have, say you have a limb with the burn on it. Instead of being fully submerged in the back to tank, you could be encased in this bioreactor where you're bathing it in nutrients and other, drugs, whatever you need to encourage skin growth. And then you can also have in the solution, you can have stem cells that are intended to differentiate into new skin. And you can use that to possibly lay down new layers. So instead of having to do skin grafts, you can use that to incubate the new layers of skin right onto an area on a person.
Interesting. How far away do you think that technology is?
The standard is 5 to 10 years.
I mean, we're 20 years away from cold fusion, but they've been saying that for the last, 60 years?
We're only 5 to 10 years away from it being 5 to 10 years away.
But at least 5 years ago, they were talking about the very first airbrush device that would spray stem cell skin culture for grafts. They would spray it on burns to help seal it. And so we actually started the first steps of it a good 5 years ago.
They've got the spray on. They've started using spray on Band-Aid almost. It's a foam over close a wound relatively quickly now. That you used to see that on like sci-fi. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. Wish we had it, and now we do. I mean, just in the last, from the first Gulf War to the second, I survived injuries that would have killed me if I'd gotten those same injuries in the first Gulf War. Just with the improved equipment, and I imagine that's only going to improve.
Well, part of the reason why we had so much trouble with traumatic brain injuries in the last 20, 30 years is because everyone is surviving all of the other things that was coming with them.
Yes. The survivability rate of the other injuries means that people are living with stuff that they didn't have to deal with before. You're right. That's why the neurologist wants me to donate my brain to science when I'm dead. So
nice.
That was an interesting conversation. Do you think that that kind of research that they're doing is going to continually lead to more improvements? Do you think they actually are learning stuff when they're looking at cadavers?
Yes.
Yeah. Does that make a difference?
Oh, yeah. So one of the key things right now is they're going to look at, well, what happened to the blood vessels?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Because the blood vessels, the damage to the blood vessels is going to determine how much oxygen your brain got. And so that's one of the key determinants. And then there are many other things that they can look for. They can look for evidence of chemical injury, toxins, physical injury, scarring, and stuff like that.
So do you think, taking this forward into the future, do you think there's going to be a point where, because obviously your brain is encased in your head, where if someone's going to get a brain injury and they're going to have some sort of solution where they're going to fix it for the victim in some sort of future tech?
I'll let Brent tackle that one since I know what he's working on.
So that's actually what we're working on. And so a lot of it depends obviously on what type of injury you have would depend on what approach you would take to deal with it. One of the big things with traumatic brain injury is that it's a lot of times, unless it's a penetrating brain injury, it's actually the secondary effects of the traumatic brain injury where you have the swelling and you have the side effects of all the cells dying, a lot of them because of the swelling and the pressure. So a lot of that, if we can kind of damp down the effects of the traumatic brain injury in the first place, that is one of the big things that can help prevent a lot of it getting worse. So that's where you see people where they get a head injury, they look fine at first, and then between swelling or bleeding later, all of a sudden you see them collapse or something, you start seeing effects later on. So some of the stuff we're looking at is possible interventions to prevent that. Some of it is interventions that could be used prophylactically to kind of help with minor stuff before it gets major. And some of it is, okay, you had a chunk of brain die. Can we grow a replacement part for you that we can kind of like zipper in?
I know they've said this didn't come out until I was already too far gone, but supposedly if you get, was it the hyperbolic chamber that does the pure oxygen?
The hyperbaric chamber.
Yeah, they said that can do stuff. So I'm wondering if we could use that in a sci-fi setting. You lock them in an airlock for a few minutes to, cycle actual pure oxygen in there. You might be able to gerrymander an actual workable solution in your fictional setting.
So one thing I've mentioned a few times in different forums is that if we have radical advances in the medical care that's capable, when you see the depiction in science fiction, we're going to have some of the supportive care and triage change that goes with it.
Okay.
One of the big examples I use is whenever you talk about regen. Oh, we have regen. We can regrow everything. Well, if we can regrow everything, then you know what's going to actually become more common, I would bet? Amputation.
Mhm.
Because if you have a limb that's been taken off and the ends are all ragged and horribly maimed and damaged, and you can regrow everything, it's going to be easier to kind of trim a few inches off and have a nice, clean surgical cut and not have all that gross damage, and then just grow it cleanly from that.
Unless you factor in cost and social class and all that.
Just overall, chop a little bit off and grow it nice and fresh, clean if you're going to be growing new.
Which also leads to the interesting problem you might have if you have a more general regeneration. People are going to be growing appendices back. They're going to be growing their tonsils back. They're going to be growing their belly buttons back, and other skin that gets removed over, at a young age, growing back, because after all, you're reprogramming the body to have all of the pieces it had at birth.
Oh.
But this also goes back to triage. If someone's going to lose the leg, why not just lop it off and then they're lighter to carry out when you're medevacing them?
Kind of ghoulish, but I get where you're going.
If they're easier to medevac, and the key is you got to get them out of there, and the leg's going to go on anyways.
JR, you're looking way too interested in this idea.
I mean, the point's to save them, not the leg.
No, sometimes it's really hard to carry some people, and like cutting some pieces off of them sounds really enticing from somebody who had to carry them.
And if it's not a piece they need anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And then and then you have other books or other fictional universes where you could just like download their consciousness into something. It's like, then you can just leave the body to burn.
Yeah. Or if you can freeze them, all you need is the brain. Just lop the head off, medevac the head.
Yeah.
Because then the body's just spare parts.
We just need a bioreactor for that.
Yeah.
That's getting to almost transhumanism at that point. Are they still them? Are they still human? Do they become something more than human?
Well, at that part, the body is, if it's replaceable, it's just spare parts. It's just the brain that's important. Which, I mean, I already think that as a neuroscientist, so I might be slightly biased.
Yeah, but what about stuff like altered carbon, where like the super rich would back up their consciousness on some like essentially the cloud, and then they would like die real world, and then like their backup would come back? Is that actually still them?
Well, it's
Car Wars hits that too.
That's the same question that Bones McCoy asked about the transporter. Is that really still them on the other end of the transporter?
B.V. Larson's did it with his Undying Mercenary series as well.
And there's another thing when you talk about medical tech is, everybody on Star Trek ignored the fact that if your ideal pattern was stored in the pattern buffer, why didn't you just fix the things that were wrong while you were at it? I mean, that was always the solution to, okay, we've now merged Tuvok and Neelix, we've split Kirk into two different parts and stuff like that. Oh, we'll just go and separate them in the pattern buffer and all this kind of stuff. Okay, why don't you fix the guy's lisp? Why don't you restore his pancreas? And why don't you detox restore Scotty's liver while you're at it?
Well, and the pattern buffer supposedly had a screening effect for disease and infection. So instead of spending all that time trying to fix and cure disease, why not just transport them from bed 1 to bed 2?
I've seen on some show, and I don't remember which one it was, they did use the transporter as a way to keep someone in medical stasis, but I don't remember what.
That was that's in Strange New Worlds first season. Dr. Mabenga's daughter has a terminal disease, and she's deteriorating fast, and so he stores her in a pattern buffer.
They also did that in the Klingon War, and then they kind of took that idea from when Riker was cloned, and then they stored Scotty.
Yep.
And yeah,
I have more problems with why didn't they ever think to just teleport a bomb onto the enemy ship and bada bing, bada boom, problem's gone.
Shields usually.
Because
they do take care of that at some point.
Because the shields are magic, and they will take care of that. Yeah.
Because the teleporters automatically disable weapons is what they have in a couple of episodes. So they deactivate their own bomb.
So is there other medical technology that you think people ignore when it comes to writing and creating fiction that you think they're missing opportunities to make more compelling stories with?
I think actually that I think people tend to go with the medical disabilities that they're either most familiar with or that the public is most familiar with, like amnesia. Okay, so amnesia is not. Boom, I've got full amnesia. I can't remember anything of my past life, and I'm now living a whole nother life with another wife, other kids, and a different job and all that. And 7 years later, boom, all my memories back. I mean, if you're going to talk amnesia, there are so many more interesting ones, like the one that causes you to ignore half of your visual field, or the ones that give you problems with remembering and speaking the names for things. It's a proper noun aphasia. I can't remember that this is a screen. That's a camera. It's the video picture-y thingy. You come up with things like that, and there are all sorts of aphasias. And there's, as I said, the one where you ignore half of your visual field is called an agnosia, and you can have. Most everybody thinks of amnesia as you can't remember things in the past, but a more common version of amnesia is you can't make a new memory. And that's, so here you are with Post-it notes for anything that you have to remember for more than 10 minutes. And you have a whole screen full of Post-it notes to remind you, and a journal what you're supposed to do the next day. I think there's a lot of neat stuff with that can be done with amnesias, and I think people who are writing and they want to write a head injury, they're missing out on things that would make it very interesting, make for a very interesting story, a lot of character development. How do you handle this personally? And I think they could do a lot more.
The psychological aspect of going through the medical procedures is one that's quite commonly ignored. Like, for example, physical rehab. A lot of people have trouble going through rehab because rehab sucks. It's painful and it's slow and it's uncomfortable and it's hard to see progress. And so people want to give up. And I know a certain someone had that in a book that came out, 2 books ago, Rob?
Something like that. Yep.
And you've got people who say things like, "But did you die, JR?" when they want to tweak your workout plan.
Yeah, I mean, physical torturers, physical therapists are known for being very opinionated. On
my medical massage therapist goes by the nickname the Palace Torturer.
Appropriate. Yeah. So what about you, JR? Is there anything that you think that they are missing opportunities to do when it comes to describing medical things in futuristic settings?
I remember it was, and I've been trying to remember what it was this whole time, but I was sitting here. It was there's a lot of books associated with the Halo universe, right? Like the Master Chief Covenant, all that. And there was an anthology they put out years ago called Halo Legends. And I remember there's this one story about a UNSC Marine who's sitting on a space station, and he's in a med bay, and he has this disease that he's never heard of, but they tell him it's like, oh, it's not a big deal. We can cure this in a couple hours. And it's cancer. And I thought that was really interesting because, like everybody probably on this podcast, probably almost everyone who's, above a certain age has had somebody in their life that they've lost to cancer, or their life has been touched by cancer in some negative way. And it was really cool that, or interesting, maybe not cool, I don't know, that in that story, it was such this like this rare thing that was so easily curable. No one had heard of it. And I think it would be kind of cool to see other stories do that same kind of thing. And that's the only one I could think of off the top of my head that's ever done that.
So one of the things that gets me is, I know part of it is, if you see it on the screen, it's because of budgetary conditions, but you see these future colonies and they go there and there's so few people that they don't have enough biological diversity of the human species that they're all inbred because everybody's related to everybody. And you're surprised that they don't have webbed feet and like forked tongues and stuff, right? And from a TV setting, I'll forgive you. I get budgets are a thing. Modern ones, use some AI, throw some extra people in there, whatever. But I've seen some people defend that, saying, well, if anybody sufficient enough to get a society to space can solve inbreeding issues. So what is your thought on the way they handle colonization when it comes to biological diversity within the human genome? And listen to me sounding smart, throwing big words around.
Well, to start with, you do know that every alien planet is actually someplace in the woods in northwestern Canada.
Yeah,
so,
every alien planet looks like Canada. I'm aware of that.
Or Kansas. The famous line, just when you think you're not in Kansas anymore, you are.
Or Utah. We get all of the weird stuff for down in the Red Rocks, so that's where they did Galaxy Quest and things like that. If you need it to look really rocky and weird, you come out west.
But you've got science fiction going on there in Utah, as it starts with, when you've got that you got that ranch with all of the weird stuff going on. So, but I think that it's true that we should probably have a handle on the genetic issues if we're going out to colonies. I'm actually giving a talk in a week where I'm going to be talking about, or in a week and a half, where I'm going to be talking about that very thing. What are we going to have to do in terms of gene therapy, gene editing, and the like as we move out to the stars and build colonies? And I think the issue is, I don't think it's that easy, because the moment we start curing something, we're going to have something else crop up. And JR said this earlier. The reason why we're having all the problems with head injuries is because the people are surviving all the other things that used to go along with the event that caused the head injury. So I think that I think you're right. I think what's the number is 10 to 25,000 is the minimum for just a colony, not even a world, just one site on a colony world.
Part of it depends on whether you want to do allow people to choose their own spouse without having to worry about inbreeding, and part of it is if you are willing to do breeding rotas, because Ethan of Athos had a smaller population with the Quaddies, but they were doing breeding rotations at the beginning to make sure that they were avoiding inbreeding. But in Rats, Bats, and Vats by Flint and Freer, most of the colonists were actually a gene bank that came along. And so they were embryos that were then cooked up in incubators. And that's how most of the colonists came out. And so that's how
they did call them vats after all.
And they did call them vats. And so that's how they got most of the colonists. And that's how they had the large genetic diversity. And they had where they could slowly bring out, okay, if we're cooking up 5,000 a year, we now have like however many years of 5,000 unrelated people, that's fresh blood, into the colony every year. That gets you, 5,000 a year times 50 years is 250,000 genetically unique, non-related people on top of the colonists that showed up on their own.
Right.
So Dr. Hampson, you had mentioned that we were talking about earlier about with the head injury and surviving the other things, which allows that to be a problem. That isn't just a head injury thing, because if you think about it, like the murder rates in the U.S. have gone down, and everyone's like, "Oh, we're killing each other less." Well, no, we're still trying. The difference is with cell phones, help is getting there quicker, which is also why we're part of the survival rate in modern wars is medical aid is getting there quicker, right? Like we can get triage there quicker, and so you end up having other problems. I suspect you're going to see that apply like that. If we solve this, then you're going to have these other problems. It's not just the one issue, it's all issues you're going to start having to apply that forward with. So if you have these people that were in vat storage to get around the genetic inbreeding issue, what other possible issues are you going to have for embryos that were stored long term, embryos that were possibly exposed to things in transit? Because there's radiation in space.
Yes, yet again another question that we had, and that one we actually discussed in a panel at a convention 2 weeks ago. The radiation issues and what we have to go through. The most likely, lot of colony fictions, long-term interstellar exploration fiction, has the ships all have a storm cellar, the most heavily shielded place in the ship. Truth of it is, the most heavily shielded place in the ship is going to be where the cryo tanks are, the hibernation tanks. And we've actually, I do know of one case where an author asked me, how can I rig something up to have my character start having his father's memories?
Oh,
we came up with a scheme, and I'm not going to talk about that so much as the reason why all of the things existed. It was a nano assemblers that could reconnect all of the brain cells the way they would be connected for memory. Why does the guy even have this? Because why was his father's pattern recorded? Because he was a 350-year-old genetic Superman. Well, because when you cure everything else, that would hit you before the age of 250, you have no idea what's sitting out there after 250. Same thing you just said, JR. It's really, once you start curing the easy stuff, then we're going to find the hard stuff or the non-obvious stuff or the things that only hit once you've been alive for a couple hundred years.
And that's not even talking about what we find on other planets that make us sick.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Do we have any closing thoughts? We've been going for about an hour. I think it's a fun thought exercise, but without, letting the doctors get too technical and boring everybody, because they've been good and been using small words for me. Do we got any closing thoughts?
Hey, look, we can even take, I can even take a brain out and play with it.
Just not mine. Not yet.
Closing thought: never let your necromancer study medicine, and never let your medic study necromancy. It'll encourage them to be lazy in one field or the other.
That's good advice. JR, I see your brain muscles, like the hamster's running around real fast right now.
I got nothing that can top what Brent just said.
All right. So, Brent, if people wanted to track you down on the wild interwebs, because I know you've written some short stories for Bane, and obviously if you go to Bane Anthologies, you can find them. But where else might they find you on the wild internets?
My main social media presence is on PubMed. You can find most of what I've published there. You'll find some reads. Whether you'll find them interesting or exciting, I can't say, but you will find some stuff to read.
There you go. And, if you're having trouble sleeping, if nothing else, he beats melatonin.
Yeah.
So is that something, jokes aside, is that something the general public has access to, or do you have to have like a Nexus Lexis account or something?
So PubMed actually is a great resource because any study that has received government funding has to go up on PubMed after 1 year and be freely accessible.
Okay, so the average person can look?
So the average person can look. You might not get it within the first year that it's out, but you should be able to get most things. And whenever I start a search, I always start with PubMed, and half the time I'm doing a search from home and I'm not logged in with the institutional email, and I can still get most papers I want without having to log in. So it's a great place to start. If you can't get it, one of the great ways, if you really want to read a paper and you can't get it, it's behind a paywall, you can see the corresponding author. Email the corresponding author and say, hey, I'm really interested in your paper. Can you send it to me? And most times corresponding authors are like, sure, here's a copy of my paper.
Cool. All right, Jana, how might we stalk you on the wild interwebs?
I am over at Linktree, linktr.ee/Opal Kingdom Press. I'm working on putting more links into that, but that's the easy umbrella way to find me. Or you can just go straight to opalkingdompress.com, and me and my various personalities hang out over there. There's an occasional call for anthologies because I do some of those, so I want your stories. And you can find me here at the Blasters and Blade podcast most of the time. So I'm really, really bad at hide and seek.
All right. JR, how might we find you on the wild interwebs?
Most active on Instagram. My handle is the Wise Author. Same handle on TikTok. Occasionally I pop up on Facebook. Also have a website that I run with a few other mill sci-fi authors, kineticfrontline.com. It's a good place to go check out all the stuff that all of us have going on at any given time.
Your videos are hilarious. So, and you have a good name for branding. You, Jesse Fame, Jesse James, like all these people whose parents were more considerate than mine and gave them good branded names for their author careers. I just was not so gifted. I'm looking at you, Mom.
Careful, your mother listens to some of these.
I know. I mean, she just didn't plan ahead for my writing career. All right.
Oh, I see. I'll make sure that she knows that.
All right. And Dr. Hampson, how might we find you on the wild interwebs?
I'm on Facebook, rob.hampson2, on X as at Thingy in Brainy, THINGY, in BRAINY. I had to stop and make sure I spelled it right there. I also have a website at rehampson.com, and I'm working on updating that, and hopefully Patreon to come later in the year.
All right. And I did link to, since he writes for Baen and Brent has written for Baen, I will link to the Baen publishing stuff so you can track them down as separately, because I do think it's worth checking out. And they have a lot of the old school sci-fi style stuff that you're going to dig. I think the classics are there. And with that, you can, wait. This is the part, dear listener, where I remind you to please be kind and speak your mind on the reviewing platforms. Your reviews help the right readers find the right book. So please do your part, people. It really does make a difference. And with that, you can find us on our Linktree at Linktree, linktr.ee, Linktree/Blasters and Blades Podcast. Again, Linktree/Blasters and Blades Podcast, where I link to all the things, the BitChutes, the Rumble, the YouTube, the TikTok, the Twitters. We've got our Spotify, our Discord, our Blasters and Blades Facebook group and Facebook page. We've got our email, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. Again, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com for professional purposes only, people. Save the shenanigans from Stabby Stab over there on the Instagram, the Twitter, and the email. You can support the show by going to buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put in the comment section that is for the podcast, and I promise I will keep my co-hosts duly caffeinated. They will drink that coffee brand coffee until they're snorting it through their nose like it's from guac. No. Family friendly. That joke's got to go. Just, it's good coffee, people. All right. They got hot chocolate and tea too, if you prefer. It's not the cardboard stuff I got from Trader Joe's. Don't recommend that. 0 stars. And with that, thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For my crazy co-host, I am J.R. Handley, and this was the Blasters and Blades Podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time, where we'll indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, and all things that go boom. And with that, we're going to hit the end button.